What is up, everybody? Welcome to the first episode of the Dead Watch podcast. My name is Austin Barnett. I'm going to be your host every day that we do this. I just wanted to give a few little updates here about the series and where everything is going and the certain directions, that it's going into. And right now, we're all just on a little bit of a timeout. Fortunately, I had my ribs broken about 2 weeks ago, so I'm still coming off of that, and that put us behind a little bit on a delay with scheduling. And as far as everybody else goes, the whole group's here. We actually, believe it or not, have like 4 or 5 new members coming in. And they'll be starting with episode 8, which is the midpoint school. We'll still be working with Austin Menard moving forward in the Paranormal Underground Network to keep things kind of moving and going. Excuse me, this is my first time doing a podcast. If you guys are watching on YouTube, hey, glad you guys can see my face. For all of you listening on Spotify, hey, and whatever other platforms you're listening on to right now. Thank you guys so much for supporting us, and we will continue to deliver content. Did watch Found Footage Volume 2 I've actually started on this week, and it's actually going really well. The second episode, Basements, just got uploaded to our Instagram page, which will be linked if you're watching on YouTube to the bottom of this video. I'm going to try to do it on Spotify. I'm still kind of learning with that. So basically the way that this show is going to go is we're, of course, going to talk about our cases, but we're also going to talk about other cases, cryptids, and pretty much anything weird, supernatural that you can really think of. I will have guests on in the future. Guests will be, of course, certain ones from Dead Watch. I know Cody, my brother, is wanting to join me sometime this coming week, which I told him that was fine. And so moving forward, everything will start to get more into place. This is just going to be the first episode here. And I just really think that I just kind of wanted to give more of an introduction than I did really anything here. So get used to this. This is just a temporary setup for those watching. This is not the actual studio room. Our studio room is actually outside. It has instruments in it where I'm starting music as well as some other recording stuff. And this table is going to be out there here soon, amongst other things. It is just a matter of getting it all set up out there. It's like freezing cold because we're in Ohio, and I'm trying to get the whole heat situation set up out there. So it's definitely a work in progress. So this is only, temporary for right now until everything else kind of falls into place with it. Also, too, I would like to thank my team. You guys have rocked it out this season. I'm sorry, everything's kind of on a delay right now. We will get back to it. I swear to you, we will get back to it. Actually, here in the next couple of weeks, is the way that everything is looking. I'm healing up quite nicely. And I know Jay's kind of preoccupied right now with his own podcast and Facebook career starting to take off. So if you're watching from home, I actually have 2 different microphone setups. One of these is running directly to my camera. The other one's running to Spotify. I'm still trying to figure out how to keep that going. But yeah, everything's pretty much the same. Like I said, we have some new members coming in. You guys will get to meet them as the show progresses. Like I said, episode 8, moving into that one is where a lot of them, excuse the background noise, will be debuting. Of course, Landon is with us still. You guys know he debuted first. And Dead Watch Explore, if you guys are keeping up with our YouTube page at all. It's like the 30 people who are. Anyways, so that's pretty much where we're going with everything. The show's still on track. You guys still got up till like episode 7 until we hit our mid-season finale, and things are going to kind of dwindle as far as the main show goes. Nothing will really be released again up until like January. The main reason why I'm doing that is because nobody wants to watch a ghost show in the middle of around Christmas time. I mean, me preferably I do, but I'm just a horror fanatic and ghost freak as it is. I love all this kind of stuff with the paranormal. Been doing it for the last 13 years now this year. Um, so yeah, like I said, as the show moves on, we'll definitely have more people on. I just figure with this being the first episode, with this being the first podcast and everything, uh, whereas I'm always going to be on here, I figured that it would be good for me just to get up here by myself and just continue doing it on my own. So that being said, we're also going to cover, like I said, we're also going to cover like certain cases, um, cryptid sightings, whatever we can really talk about that's kind of weird that week. Excuse us if we ever, when everybody's on and we just kind of veer off into just memories territory because we tend to do that every now and then. So basically, yeah, the whole team will be on here at some point, I'm sure. And that includes the new guys whenever they get some a little bit of experience underneath of them. And everything starts kind of just falling back into place. Like I said, we just kind of had a bumpy go of it these last 2 months. Everybody's had a lot of personal problems. Everybody's had a lot of stuff going on. And that comes down to, deaths in the family, God, uh, health issues. I mean, everybody just kind of hit the fan. It's kind of interesting. I know I'll get into this in a later episode, but everything really didn't start falling apart until we did the Glaze Village up in Defiance, Ohio. God, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. It was weird, but we'll get into that. And that was with parts of more paranormal. I'm pretty sure he'll be on the show at some point. I would like to have him on with us to talk about that. Uh, so I'm not really going to get into much of our cases. I know I'm going to have Star, I'm going to have Lindsay on here at some point to talk about the Concord Center. I'm kind of wanting these to kind of coincide with episodes when we do talk about cases. So I'll have those two on here to talk about that, and then we'll move on with Jay, Cody, and Lindsay, and pretty much the ones who were there on the case. Unlike the one, with me, Jay, and Cody, where it was just us at Father John's, that'll just be the three of us when we get into that, which might be tomorrow, it might be next week. I'm still working out the scheduling with all this, but it's going to be definitely interesting to see if this takes off and how well this takes off, and everything else. So you guys just stay tuned, and we'll definitely keep you up on that. This show is definitely always going to have a very chill, relaxed vibe to it. I want to keep it, we will always debate with each other when it comes down to paranormal stuff. But I always want to keep the debates really chill, really laid back. It's always a laid back atmosphere here on the show. I want to keep it that way. Um, like I said, this is just temporary setup. It'll move on. Excuse any background noise you hear. My fridge is very angry, and also too, the light behind me keeps on making this like piercing noise for some reason. I don't know what's up with it. I gotta mess with it. But anyways, we're just gonna go ahead and get into it because I think I've been talking just about basic crap now. Yeah, for 10 minutes. So I think the first case I want to just kind of talk about here and kind of cover is the Amityville haunting and everything centered around it. I think also too, this will also start moving us in with later episodes into the Warrens cases. I have my own thoughts on the Warrens and how they handle stuff, what their cases actually were like, which we'll get into more in the future. So yeah, let me pull up my notes here real quick for you guys. There's just been a lot going on this week. My mind's just been kind of everywhere. Um, it's just a lot of personal issues and stuff like that. But we're just going to go ahead and get into it. So we're going to talk about the Amityville horror case. So everybody, I think, and their mom at this point is familiar with this case. It spawned off a crap load of movies. I think they're up in like the 30s now, somewhere like that. I mean, they got the Amityville Vampire, they got the Amityville Hauntings, they got several documentaries. The best one I've watched in recent years was My Amityville Horror, which centered around the youngest kid in the family and what he experienced in the house because the kids were never really interviewed a whole lot. We'll get more into that in just a second. So it all started out on a cool stormy night in 1974 where Ronnie DeFeo entered his parents' rooms, his brother and sister's rooms, with a rifle and pump shots into him. He was later convicted and everything, and he said that there was a voice that caused him to do it. Now, I don't think that it's weird that he said that there was a voice to do it. Ryan DeFeo has been proven that he was on a lot of drugs at the time. I know heroin was involved, and a few other things were involved with it. Um, so he heard all these voices. What I can't explain with this is the fact that I think it was like 7 people were killed in this home. Not a single person woke up while the shots were being fired into the other people. Also, too, the bodies were found weirdly with their hands and feet like they were tied. It was above them. They were all face down, and they had all pretty much been shot in the same spot, like something had been holding them. And also, too, how nobody in the neighborhood heard any type of gunfire. A dog didn't bark. There was nothing. And a lot of people have chalked it up to, okay, well, it was because of the thunder and stuff like that as the night's gone on. But the thing is, with the type of rifle that he was using, even with thunder going, you would have heard the extra noise. And it would also be extremely, extremely hard for him to time the shots by the thunder. It's not probable. So there's a lot of things still in this case that are unanswered. But we're going to move forward now to a couple years to the Lutzes. Now, the Lutzes moved in not long after the Fayos were murdered in the house. It was George Kathy Lutz, and I think they're 3 kids and a dog. They purchased this house basically for a steal. I mean, if you look at the market uh, back in the 70s when they have purchased the home, they basically got it for what would be considered just a steal nowadays, especially for the size of the house and just how big it was. They said when they moved in that they didn't really notice much, and that's what also will lead me into my next couple points here. Um, the family only lasted 28 days, and between that 28 days, they experienced just off the wall paranormal activity, demonic activity, some of the stuff of which I've been doing this for 13 years, and I have never seen or heard personally of any of this stuff actually happening. So they say 28 days. I mean, we're talking there was black sludge coming up out of the toilets. There was black sludge running down the walls. It sounded like a marching band was going through their living room at 3 a.m. They discovered a red room in the basement that wasn't there, down to just the theories of the it being built on a sacred Indian burial ground, which I'll get into that here in just a few. So basically, the Lutzes were ran out of their home. They ended up publishing a book a couple months later that ends up becoming just a hit as far as films go, because the book was also a hit as well. And then we get into more of the nitty gritty here because the Warrens get involved. Now, keep in mind, this is already a hugely covered media case. When you get the Warrens involved with anything, as we'll see, talking about future cases, it just becomes a media fiasco. They went in there and basically did all the stuff, and they captured one of the most infamous paranormal photos of all time, which, interestingly enough, has been debunked. I'll get into that here in a few. And Lorraine Warren was quoted by saying, "This is the closest to hell that I ever want to get." And it's been debated over the years on exactly what has happened that night. There have been like mixed stories and everything, but basically a lot of people were touched. There were seances going on. They captured one of those, like I said, one of the most influential paranormal photos of all time, quote unquote. And they just kept it. They just kept it up. They just kept it going. Well, here's where the problem lies. Everything that pretty much a lot of people know about that case, you could pretty much throw it out the window. So when it comes down to the Lutzes were in way over their heads. George Lutz was running a tree company that was failing. The family did not have a lot of money. I think it even evolved down to the point to where Kathy was picking up extra jobs to make ends meet. The family got in over their heads, plain and simple. And I think that's honestly what really fueled this case. And a lot of what they experienced, the kids said that, the youngest kid in this documentary, he did say that they did experience a lot of stuff, but not to the degree that George Lutz and everybody had did. Now, when they met with William Weber, who was the lawyer and I think one of the writers for one of the books, they were quoted by saying, when Weber would bring an idea to them, George Lutz would look at him and be like, "I don't care what you do with the story, just make sure it sells, make sure it's scarier." These are recorded tapes that have come out. It was also proven that they could not afford the payments on the place, and even the theory of it being built on a sacred ancient Indian Native American burial ground was debunked because they do not bury their dead that close to the water because of receding shoreline. The bodies are going to be swept away into the ocean, into the river, whatever. So basically, overnight after this case happens, George and Kathy Lutz become just hugely famous. They got the most famous ghost story in America. They've got the Warrens backing them behind them, and it just becomes this huge sensation. But when you really sit down, you look at the facts, and you also look at the fact that every single owner in there that has moved in since has never once reported anything extremely, extremely weird happening. I mean, I'm just saying it's just a little bit weird that it just happened to them. I know the youngest son, he has said that George had a fascination with the occult. So, I mean, that could very well be the cause of it. He could have very well been bringing in whatever he was bringing in onto himself, and that's what they were experiencing. What the Warrens and everybody was picking up on was just the leftover energy that George had left there. And keep in mind, the media did not leave them alone. And supposedly, according to George, whatever was in the house followed them all the way to California. They left New York, moved all the way to California, went out there and started completely over, and yet still they were reporting paranormal activity happening inside of their friend's house or their parents' house. I can't remember which one. Keep in mind, I'm doing this case just off of pure memory. I'm not running off of any type of script right now or anything like that. I just had a few footnotes over here that I wanted to look into with it. So yeah, basically, they were able to take and I think make the greatest all-American ghost story of all time. Especially at a time where stuff like that really wasn't huge. It really wasn't coming out. You didn't have stuff like Dead Watch. You didn't have stuff like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures to really get in there and say, okay, this is what's happening. Let's blow this up even more than what it is. And it was the first kind of taste, I think, to the American people of just a raw ghost story. And here you have America's great grandma and great grandpa of paranormal investigating at the forefront of it. You're going to be in for a crazy story. You're going to be in for a crazy time. And the case itself is crazy. Now, I didn't mention the picture that they captured. It was ended up being debunked years later that it was some guy that was there. He was setting up audio equipment when they had snapped the picture. And the reason why the eyes were reflected was because the guy wears glasses. And they basically chalked it off for years as it was a child that was in the room. It was a demonic entity. It was this, it was that. You guys can have your own opinions on the Amityville case. I'm not here to discourage anybody from enjoying it, from believing in it. All that I'm saying about the Amityville case is it's a load of shit. That's all that I'm saying. It's just fabricated. is fabricated and it was blown out of proportion. They made movies on it. I mean, come on, you got like Amityville Vampire. I remember one of them was about a clock that came out of the house after the house was destroyed. Amityville 3D, still to this day, is probably one of the worst um, horror movie sequels I have ever seen to date, and I think it will always be. But that's the discussion for my horror series is getting ready to drop. Watch it. Anyways, so what do I think about the Amityville case? I think I've pretty well given my thoughts on it and where I stand with that case. It's not one that I really care to really hardcore look into and dissect because honestly, to me, it's just so open and shut that there's really no point in doing that. So, I think even just going back through and analyzing this case, it throws up so many questions. It throws up so many it's just ridiculous. So I think honestly, as far as the Amityville case goes, great movie, great book, great American ghost story. Is it true? I don't think so. Did Ryan DeFeo do those incredibly heinous things to his family? Yes. Do I believe there might have been something a little bit more involved there? Yes. And the reason why I say that is because there was an incident in the DeFeo household. Now, the DeFeos were the ones that were murdered. They were there before the Lutzes. Ronnie and his father had gotten into it because his father had struck his mom. Ronnie went downstairs, grabbed the rifle that he would later use to massacre out the rest of the family, put it up to his back of his dad's head, and pulled the trigger. Luckily, by the grace of God, whatever higher force is out there, whatever, he was able to the pin I guess jammed or something, and the bullet was not able to shoot. And I think honestly, right there was the most interesting part of this case is not the Lutzes, but the DeFeos. What caused Ronnie DeFeo exactly to go out of his mind? What caused that gun to not fire and blow his dad's head off that day? And what allowed him to just do these heinous, evil things to his family? Just heinous, evil thing, and just nobody heard a thing. That's what still gets me to this day about this case. Nobody heard a thing. Nobody in the family woke up after the first shot. That shot should have echoed straight through that house and woke everybody up, but it didn't. So I think that's always going to be one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the Amityville case because there is just no reasonable explanation for it. A dog didn't in the neighborhood didn't even bark. Neighbors didn't hear it. And like I said, it would be extremely hard to time any type of shot to a random thunderstorm that I think wasn't even supposed to blow in that day in the first place. So the Amityville horror, although it does not, in my opinion, hold up as far as a legitimate case goes, there are still a lot of mysteries, a lot of what ifs, and a lot of things that just continue to be baffling about this whole entire case. And I know I'll bring this case up again at some point because I want to get my team's opinions on it. I want to get everybody else's opinions on it to what they think happened and what they think's going on. So I think I'm going to wrap up my thoughts on the Amityville case right here on that note. It's definitely still some mystery to it. But as to say that that mystery hasn't fully been dissolved over the years is definitely an understatement. And it's definitely something, like I said, I want to bring the whole group on here to discuss at some point moving forward. So, anyways, I think also too, this next section we are just going to call Cryptid Country. Anyways, I think our first one that I want to start out with talking about today is definitely going to be the Mothman of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Now, this one, I think the reason why I love this case so much is not only because it's local. I mean, I'm literally just like maybe 2, 3 hours away from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. It's literally across the river from me, and it's something that I've always been fascinated with. The whole case itself is mind-boggling. And this case would go on to spawn movies. It would go on to spawn books. And Mothman himself has become a cultural sensation. Let's talk about it here. So the first sighting of Mothman actually occurred in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966, where there was a group of grave robbers, or not grave robbers, sorry, grave diggers who were undergoing some digs at a cemetery late at night, and they had woken up and they had looking up to a pair of big red eyes. They said stood about 10 feet and it was extremely, extremely hairy. It rushed up over them, flew into the night. It was not about this whole thing is it was chalked up to just being a big bird. That's what they thought that it was. That's what it was always chalked up to. The most earliest sightings of Mothman in 1966, people described it as a giant bird or a giant owl. There was no association with moths. There was no associations with anything like that up until later on, which I will get back into. So, according to the legend, in 1967, it was spotted again, December 15th. A bunch of fishermen saw it hovering over the Silver Bridge around that time. And I think it was also around this time that the first um, sightings of it would be there was this couple who was driving down the road. And keep in mind, I'm running all this off of no script, it's just pure memory. And it swooped down next to their car and it was going through the same speed that they were. They were in this area that was used in World War I or II as like a dynamite explosives factory. They used it back there. It's still accessible today. I think actually next year Dead Watch will be going to the Mothman Festival. So we'll definitely go out there and do a live or do a video in that area. Whew. So, as I was saying, uh, this creature will go on just to be sighted and sighted and sighted. And there was even a sighting of a man named Ingrid Cold. He came out of nowhere. A couple started reporting that he came down out of like a bright light, almost a flying saucer. And it kind of, you can't really talk about the Mothman mythos without talking about Ingrid Cold. So this man was just a very tall, plain man in a suit. And he would smile, but the way that he would communicate with you, from what a lot of people would say, is through like telepathy. His lips weren't moving, but you could hear him. And a lot of people have, over the years, pointed that the Mothman and Ingrid Cold have some type of connection. And honestly, I think it's very, very plausible. Who is Ingrid Cold? Nobody ever really did find out. Nobody ever really did learn exactly who he was because he came and went. He came just as soon, or he went just as soon as he came. And I think that that was the biggest one that is compelling for this case because there are multiple people who believe that they have seen Ingrid Cold. And it was around the same time that all these crazy, crazy, crazy Mothman sightings were happening. And keep in mind, too, I find it odd that the name Mothman was what ended up sticking with people because, like I said, early descriptions of the creature was a giant bird. It was like a giant crane almost looking creature. And there have been theories as to, what it was. But we'll get into that in a moment. This all led up to the Mothman sightings culminating, I think, in like 1966, 67, to the Silver Bridge collapse. It ended up claiming the lives of I think like 6,700 something people, as they all plunged into the icy river in between the borders of Ohio and Point Pleasant. I think it was in December. Mothman was spotted flying around the bridge around the same time, so it kind of lends the theory: is Mothman an omen? Is he an omen of death? Is he an omen of life? What is he, or is he an omen of, that pops up right before disaster? Personally, I don't believe the alien theory. I really don't, because he's been sighted more times. I've heard rumors, that he was sighted before 9/11 around the New York area. I heard, rumors that, before all these big disasters have happened, there has been a Mothman sighting or a Mothman creature like sighting around that time. I think the most recent one that I seen was over in the Denver airport. I think it was around 2018. It was the last really one I really kept up with. You got to think I stepped out of the cryptozoology thing for a little bit and started going more towards paranormal. So my research with cryptids hasn't been as great as I would like it to be over the past couple months. But I think that he was spotted out there. But the weird thing is, nothing's happened at Denver Airport, which leads people to believe the whole alien theory, because it goes in hand with Sasquatch. Which honestly, I would like to have Jay on here for when we cover Sasquatch, because I feel like that's just going to be a really really funny conversation, um, especially with my own personal views on that. But as far as alien theory, I don't believe it. There's another theory that basically a moth was somehow got into some chemicals back inside of the TNT area. It was mutated and it became the Mothman. I don't believe that one either. Honestly, I think what Mothman is I think it is a being that appears before disaster to make sure that people are warned about it. He's an omen. He's something that people want to get, want to take as a warning sign. I think that's why he's got the red eyes. And it's odd because, a lot of these reports are conflicting with each other on the Mothman. The height changes, the wingspan changes, the speed at which it flies changes. A lot of people said the eyes were glowing red, when other people had said it wasn't until the light hit the eyes that they seen the red, meaning that they were reflective. Uh, and it also goes hand in hand with another one that we're going to get into, the Flatwoods Monster, which was sighted around Virginia, I think maybe like 5, 10 years before. And basically, that one ended up turning out, from what everybody could tell and what experts can tell, it ended up turning into a barn owl. So I definitely think that there are some, now I use that word some, Mothman sightings that are legit, and I think that there are some that are just completely just misidentifications, as well as a lot of these cryptids that people keep on seeing, keep on reporting. And I think that that's going to continue on as time goes on, because it just happens, guys. I mean, with humans, with the way humans' eyes are built, unless we have a point that we can, judge something's size off of, then we're just automatically going to assume it's huge, especially when it's flying up in the air. When it could have just been a oversized crane, it could have been an oversized barn owl. I mean, you really don't know, and we got to think we're dealing with a case that happened back in the '60s. 90% of the witnesses are dead now. Like, there's hardly any of them left, and the ones that are there, if you listen to them and talk to them now, like some people have, their story has changed. And yes, their story is going to change. The reason why their story is going to change is because the human memory just, it gets foggy over time. New things are entered into the brain, other things are taken out or put into like subconscious. So certain details you're not going to remember as clear. Certain things you're not going to remember as clear. So to anybody out there who's trying to say that these witnesses are lying, the ones that are still around that have given recounts of their stories, that are saying that they're lying, they're more than likely not lying. They were just having memory issues. That was what, almost 60 years ago now? Yeah, over 60 years ago now. So what do I personally believe happened? I believe that there was a series of unexplained occurrences that happened in the Point Pleasant area that could be linked to extraterrestrial. I also think that there happened to be a very large barn owl or crane that was sighted in the area around the time. And because most of your Mothman sightings come in the darkness, it was people misidentifying this creature and pushing it to be bigger than what it was. And honestly, it's a good thing that they did. I mean, if they didn't, you wouldn't have the wonderful Mothman Museum down there. You wouldn't have the Mothman Festival every year down there. You wouldn't have been put into Fallout 76. You wouldn't have this huge mythology of a creature that could exist, couldn't exist, may not exist, or may just be made up in the imagination. I think that's the most beautiful thing about all this stuff that we're going to be talking on this podcast. I think that the human imagination is the most beautiful thing, and it can come up with the most fantastical things, even if they're not true. And I'm never going to sit here and say that I don't believe in ghosts and spirits. And I'm not going to sit here and say that the witnesses of these ghosts and spirits, these cases that we're going to be talking about in the future, are going to be exactly true. But I do believe it serves up a good story, good piece of American folklore, and a great, great legacy tale to pass on for generation after generation, inspiring new paranormal investigators, new cryptozoologists, new ufologists, and all those who look to the stars and still keep the wonder in the world. That is our episode today, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for those who have listened to us on Spotify. Thank you so much for those of you watching us on at home at YouTube. You guys keep up the good work. Like I said, the setup isn't forever. I will be back on with the next episode, either this week, next week. Who knows? It's me. Anyways, I'm Austin Barnett. You guys have a great night, and I'll catch you guys later. Thank you guys so much for listening. Like and subscribe.